Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication, finally, of Justin Baldoni himself. We've done one on Blake, we've done one on his lawyer, and now it's time to actually take a look at him. More on that in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro first. Okay, so there might be a few of you out there who are still unsure as to what's going on in this situation, and for those of you who are watching, and that's you, this is for you. Justin Baldoni was born on January 24th of 1984 in Los Angeles, California, and is an actor, director, producer, speaker, and entrepreneur. Throughout his career, Baldoni focused on redefining masculinity in modern culture, which was something that was semi-used against him in the recent legal drama between himself and his ex-co-star from the movie It Ends With Us, Blake Lively, and her husband Ryan Reynolds. Along with his acting and directing career, Baldoni has had an active role in multiple philanthropic ventures. He co-founded the production company named Wayfarer Studios, which orchestrated several partnerships and movements to help the homeless population in LA and to provide support to those experiencing domestic violence. Along with this, Baldoni is on the board of ambassadors for the TJC, a nonprofit advocating for women, girls, and all immigrant survivors of gender-based violence. Despite being married to Swedish actress Emily Foxler, now known as Emily Baldoni, and spending much of his professional time in the public eye, he has kept his personal life largely private. He and Emily and their 2 kids live in Los Angeles, where they have been weathering the current onslaught around the It Ends With Us controversy. Speaking of the controversy itself, here's a quick debrief as to what's going on there. On December 20th of 2024, actress Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department against Justin Baldoni, accusing him of sexual harassment and retaliation during the filming of It Ends With Us. The New York Times reported that after Lively raised these concerns, Baldoni and producer Jamie Heath allegedly hired crisis management experts to damage Lively's reputation through social media and through strategic media placements. Baldoni denied Lively's accusations, calling them false through the voice of his lawyer, Bryan Freedman. The next day, in response to Lively's allegations, Baldoni's talent agency actually dropped him as a client, a move supported by Lively's partner, Ryan Reynolds. Author Colleen Hoover, who wrote the novel on which the film itself is based, also publicly sided with Lively. Additionally, Baldoni's Voices of Solidarity award was rescinded, and his podcast co-host Liz Plank resigned. Even Sony Pictures voiced their support for Lively, condemning any attacks on her reputation. In response to the New York Times' coverage, Baldoni filed a $250 million libel lawsuit, claiming that the newspaper promoted an unverified narrative. The Times defended its reporting, stating that it was based on thorough review of documents and accurately quoted communications, though that itself was also highlighted to not be entirely true. On December 31st, 2024, Lively filed a lawsuit against Baldoni, alleging his PR team orchestrated a plan to undermine her reputation in retaliation for the reporting of sexual misconduct. The lawsuit named Baldoni, his studio, Wayfarer, and 2 PR representatives. Lively's attorneys accused them of violating federal and California laws. Then, on January 16th of 2025, Baldoni's attorney filed for a $400 million lawsuit against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and their publicist Leslie Sloan, alleging civil extortion, defamation, and an invasion of privacy. The lawsuit claimed Lively attempted to control the movie's production and later accused Baldoni of a smear campaign to deflect attention from her own issues. To further emphasize his point, Baldoni has stated that he plans on creating a website where they will upload all of the evidence regarding the scandal, claiming that he has nothing to hide and that the evidence should speak for itself. As if to back this up with immediate action, an audio clip of a voicemail he left for Blake during the shoot has been recently leaked. In the voicemail, which we will be listening to today, Baldoni apologizes to Blake in relation to a scene in the movie and describes himself as a flawed man who will always own up to his mistakes and apologize for them.
Hey, Blake. It is 2 in the morning. Hopefully this does not wake you up. Whew. Wow, there's so much I want to say to you, and I hope that we can FaceTime or see each other in person soon and get to talk more. But I'm just gonna send you a few thoughts, and hopefully it's not gonna be more than a few minutes. But I don't have the best track record. I don't think either one of us have the best track record for our voice memos. I want to start with an apology. Man, reading the second part of your message, my heart sank, and I'm really sorry. I for sure fell short, and you worked really hard on that, and the way you framed it, and how that made you feel. I just want to say thank you for sharing that with me. That takes a lot of trust and vulnerability, and I feel really grateful that you feel safe enough to tell me that that's how you feel and share that with me. And I'm really sorry. I fucked up. That is a fail on my part. One thing you should know about me is I will admit and apologize when I fail. I am far from perfect. I am a very flawed man, as my wife will attest. And and I'm gonna fuck up. I'm gonna say the wrong thing. I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth. I'm gonna piss you off probably, but I will always apologize and find my way back to center. That is one thing I can assure you of. And I'm sorry I made you feel that way. That must have felt terrible. And I will for sure do better. That was not my best weekend, and I should have given it more time. And damn right, you got great friends if that's how you felt and they knew that. And fuck, we should all have friends like that. Aside from the fact that they're two of the most creative people on the planet, the three of you guys together is unbelievable. Talk about energy and just a force, all three of you. But I just wanted you to know that I didn't need that, because it's really good, and it's gonna make the movie sing like you said, and I'm excited to go through the whole movie with you. I'm just excited to spend time with you. I'm excited to be in your sphere and your presence, and for us to share creative juices together, although that sounds terrible. I think you and I have been trying to build a relationship, which I think we've done successfully. I mean, here we are talking like this, me into my phone at 2 a.m, but largely via text and voice note. And I will be honest with you, that is not my biggest strength. I love being with people and being in somebody's space and being face to face, and I feel like that's where I excel, and definitely fallen short at times in our text and voice note exchanges, because there's so much to communicate and there's so much happening, and all that to say, I'm just really looking forward to spending time together, and I think that's going to really go a long way for our chemistry, which I believe is there and has been there from the start. So I was so damn excited when you wanted to do this film. I felt it in the room when we met, and yeah, I think it does come from the both of us being so fucking hardworking and having a vision and not settling. And I'm excited to have a creative partner in that with you. And it's just really exciting. There's so much more to say. There's so much I want to say. And there's one thing that I do need to say, which is I am so sorry you have been through what you've been through with these other filmmakers and producers or whoever the people were that you worked with. It just pissed me off. Those fuckheads that I'm just still kind of blown away that this is the industry that we're in and that you've experienced that as a woman. And I know I don't need to say it, but that's not at all going to be or will be, and hopefully it's not been the experience with me. There's nothing more exciting to me like that I get to work with Blake Lively and have her, all of her. I mean, that's what I want. And so there's been no hesitancy with me sending you the final draft file. I am totally fine with that. The only reason I didn't send it today was because I was trying to implement and add your notes into my working draft, which is already, like, I'm all over that draft right now. So there's a whole bunch of new stars that are going to be collated pages. And I just haven't had a chance to send it to you. But there's no hesitancy. I'm happy to send it to you. And I'm sorry that that has happened to you before. And I hope after this experience there will be a new, I don't know, I hope it'll be healing in some way. Because that's all I want. I want this movie to be healing. I want this movie to be commercial just like you and affect people and touch people. And I want to walk you through my whole plan and the work that we're doing with the domestic violence partner that we found, No More, and just my vision. And I just know that this can be really, really special, and it's going to be special. And you're the secret sauce, and we're the secret sauce. And anyways, I have so much more to say. I'm going to stop rambling because, Jesus Christ, it's been 6 minutes and 30 seconds, so fuck me. I'm sorry. You probably have kids all over you and a baby on your boob, and you're listening to me ramble at 2 in the morning. I hope you're feeling better, and give Ryan my love. Thank you for sending me that. It means the world to me that you trust me with your feelings and your thoughts like that, and I can't wait to spend more time with you. Okay, I'm done. Cutting myself off. Good night.
In light of the recent release of this voicemail, and due to the request of many of you, I have decided to finally analyze Baldoni's nonverbal communication during an interview he did with CBS during the initial release of the movie itself. In preparation and for a more accurate read, I have poured over hours of footage of Baldoni. I did so to establish a functional nonverbal baseline and to get an understanding of his social behaviors around his wife, kids, and co-stars from other projects he has been a part of. With this working model of his behavior and body language, I hope to unearth the intentions behind this specific interview. Is he being manipulative, or is he simply misunderstood? Now, as is the case with any of the body language analyses that you see here online, this video is meant exclusively for entertainment and educational purposes. Nothing I say here can or should be utilized as any form of professional or legal evidence. Regardless, I do believe that that is enough of the backstory and the disclaimers. On to the actual analysis itself.
I mean,
it was supposed to be just once. Now I'm thinking maybe twice. that was 10 minutes and 36 seconds into the movie. Not that I was counting, but I thought that was one of the best first kisses I've seen on a movie.
Oh boy, Justin Baldoni, you see, we've been talking to you all morning long. Good morning, good to see you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Go ahead and pause here. So something that I just want to make note of with Baldoni's nonverbal communication is he's sitting here, he's not needing to respond to anything as of yet. He likes to sit with his legs crossed. This is something that I have seen repeatedly throughout many of his interviews. So seeing that here, that makes sense. To me, that would be considered synchronized with the baseline that I was able to establish with him. Along with that, as they're talking about this first kiss scene, it's a little bit uncomfortable, and we could see that reflected in Baldoni's nonverbal communication as he does break eye contact and turn a little bit away from the people that are talking about the scene itself. And that would make sense contextually for us if he was feeling a level of discomfort around that, considering how much was truly bubbling behind the scenes, even at this point here. So that discomfort does make sense here. So we're now going to see kind of how he starts to respond to these people, and this will all be in the context of this specific interview. For those of you that do not know, nonverbal baselines, there's not just one set nonverbal baseline for a person in all of their scenarios. It's much more accurate and reliable to establish a specific baseline for each individual in specific scenarios. So this would be his baseline with this one, and that's why I went through and I tried to find as many other interviews as I possibly could to be able to understand what his nonverbal baseline is during interviews. We have a decent understanding walking into this, and we'll continue on through and talk about what we see.
I'm so happy to be here. You guys are such lights.
We love your film. We love your work. We love what you've done with this book, which has, it sold 6 million copies, Colleen Hoover's book. I've been, in anticipation of you coming here, I went on Reddit to see what people are saying about the book in anticipation of the film. They love the book. So there's millions of fans out there. You are one of those fans. You immediately bought this book right, and you wanted to direct it. Why?
Well, I first optioned this.
All right. So during that entire time, as these facts, the statistics, more or less, are being talked at Baldoni, his response is to stay fairly stationary. I see a couple movements here and there with his fingers. They're not related to anything that's being stated, so I'm not seeing that as possible very controlled manipulators or self-soothing gestures. But then as he's starting to shift off of this, I'm just listening to you spout these numbers and things at me, to actually responding, he does a postural change, which for those of you that do not know, postural changes are usually indicative of a shift in a conversation or in a tone or a mood. You'll see those postural changes come in. So for him, he shifts around and he re-leans his head back on his hand here, and he's starting to fall back into the patterns that we saw when we initially started this interview already. Regardless, all of this so far is staying consistent with what his nonverbal communication has been throughout other interviews. So let's see how this actually plays out as he answers the question.
Optioned this book in 2019, and at the time it had sold just under 1 million copies. And I had
Why
never
did
read
you read it? Yeah.
Well, I just started Wayfair Studios, and at the time my book agent, shout out to Johanna Castillo, sent it to me. And she said, just read it, because I was looking for movies that could be commercial and speak to the human experience. And
Were you reading romance novels?
And I had never read a romance novel.
Never?
And she said, just trust me, read it. So I read it, and by the end of the book, I couldn't even read the text on the page because I was crying so much. My wife was in bed next to me, and she's, you know, I got snot coming out of my nose. And then I read the reason why Colleen wrote the movie. It was for her mother, who had a real life experience like this. You know, she was Lily Bloom.
I'm going to go ahead and pause here. So what I do find fascinating about this recollection from Baldoni in this are the emblems that he's doing with his hands. He's showing and he's emphasizing various things that he's saying with his words, and he's showing them. So he's talking about, all of the snot and then the crying, and he's gesturing to these different areas. And this doesn't mean for sure that he's being authentic. However, as a person is trying to convey a convincing lie, be it a persona that they're trying to put on, or if there's a completely twisted narrative, as more and more and more facets come into play, it's harder and harder to juggle all of those different facets. And one of the things that tends to go first are these extra gestures that are in there that don't need to be there, but all that they do is emphasize or enhance what's being talked about, because they're so focused on, I have to make sure I get the lie itself straight, that they start to forget to do the other things that make the lie convincing. So if he is lying at this part, one, he is an actor. He has done this on repeat in front of a camera, so there's that possibility that he's acting. Another note to make on that front is that acting and lying are still different. Yes, they're both portraying false narratives, I suppose would be a way to put it. They're both portraying false narratives, but as an actor or an on-screen talent, the support of that is pretty big. Everybody wants you to convincingly portray this false narrative. That's the whole point of it. And so a person can be a very, very good actor while still not being a good liar. Say he was trying to present something that was false in some way, he could rely on his acting ability to try to work with that, but the fact that everybody else, literally anybody watching, would only want him to be telling the truth, and if he's trying to tell a lie, they're rather attacking of it, or at very least they do not support it, it does make it more difficult for even a paid on-screen talent to convey a convincing lie due to just the environment around the narratives themselves. So that's something else that I want to be able to make note of, is that there's the possibility that he can use his acting. It's just not as likely considering the environment and the climate that he's trying to do so in. Now let's continue on through.
And I just thought if this could affect me in this way, then I can only imagine what it could do for women and people who are in this situation all over the world. Because all of us have a situation or a pattern that we need to end the cycle of.
How did it change your mindset, I guess, going into a movie like that that touches on domestic violence, among other topics? Don't want to give everything away, but how did that change you as an actor, as a director, in terms of how you see that issue and your role in speaking out about it?
Well, you know, I think it's a great question. I think as a man, I'm always going to come with my own bias.
All right, so this is now a more pointed question that has to do with a weighty topic, so I'm paying extra close attention to see if he's going to start doing any manipulators to really indicate a level of unrest or dissatisfaction with what's being said. The only thing that starts to creep out as she's talking about these things is you could see the manipulators coming out around his fingers. However, they are not frantic. He has done that before in an area where that doesn't seem to be related to any other verbal processing. So then seeing that there, it's at very best muddy. So we can't be like, oh, he's using a manipulator on his fingers, so he's lying, he's stressed and anxious and whatnot due to the prior existence of it. We do want to make note of it. Then if we look across the rest of his body during that time, he doesn't do anything to draw any distance or close himself off in any way to that question or the person that asked that question. Non-verbally speaking, that means at least he's subconsciously open to those styles of questions, which would make sense. He knew that he was going to be getting some of these styles of questions, so being able to be prepared for that is likely something that even his PR team, anybody who he had to talk to and be coached about with these interviews would probably bring up. So this is something that he's likely focused on, but even down to the smaller movements of his nonverbal communication during that time, I didn't see anything that would push me to be like, ooh, he's being shady or suspicious in this specific area. It seems as though he's being open and authentic from what I can tell. Let's hear his answer.
With my own biases. And it's one of the reasons I was afraid to direct this movie, let alone act in it. And I wanted to make sure this film always had a female gaze, and I was never putting myself into it. But one of the things that I think is very easy to say, especially for us men, is when we maybe talk to somebody who's in this situation, or we read a book, or we hear a news story, the question that's always asked is, why did she stay? And that's the wrong question.
Yeah.
What we need to be asking ourselves is, why do men harm?
Yes.
And
all right, gonna go ahead and pause there. That's a fantastic statement, and it's a really complex just line of conversation in general. That concept of accusing a person who is in an abusive relationship or asking them, even innocently so, asking them, well, why didn't you just go? Why didn't you just leave? So often that's based off of ignorance on the person who's asking the question. It's based off of some misunderstanding, or they don't have enough knowledge in that specific area of abuse, and it comes across very quickly as victim blaming. And that's simply a no-go. And so with him even bringing light to that and calling attention to that and saying that it's not why did you stay, it's more so why did the other person be such a pile of crap? Why would that be the case? That is a much better question, and it's something that he chose to bring forward on this highly televised interview. Now, the possibility is that at this point he's being manipulative and trying to utilize these key phrases or concepts to be able to build up a caricature of himself, and that's why I went and I checked the other interviews that I could. I wanted to see what his philanthropic history actually was. I wanted to see what his public persona was. And then I wanted to see any footage that I possibly could of him interacting with his wife and his kids to see how perhaps a behind the scenes, not straight to a camera, not in a publicized interview on television, something like that, to see how he behaves in regards to them. And throughout all of my findings, I never found points in his nonverbal communication or even just how he spoke that he was dominating or controlling or quick to anger or anything along those lines, even in scenarios where it would be more easy for him to fall into that vein of behavior. Now, there is the distinct possibility that everything that he has done online and in front of cameras is fully curated. He's planned it all. He's very intentional and careful with what he says and does so that nobody can keep track of him. There is that distinct possibility. However, as longevity enters into the picture, it becomes more and more difficult to keep that facade, if it is a facade, up for that long without something starting to slip through the cracks. And that's where that intentional research of trying to find areas where it would be easier for him to allow things that are distasteful to slip through the cracks to do so. And in my research, like I said, I was not able to find any. So if you do know of some, let me know in the comments of this video so that we can actually have a little bit clearer picture of it. But from what I was able to find myself, I was not able to track anything down of him behaving distastefully towards the people that he's being accused of behaving distastefully towards. So let's continue forward.
And that was the big thing for me. And what I've learned more and more and more of is, like, you know, these women who experience this every single day, there's real love there. You know, there's charm, there's charisma, there's passion, there's this belief that they can be better, and it's not so simple. So our friends at No More, I'm wearing their pin right now, they were the ones who really worked with me to help me make this film as truthful as possible and hopefully do justice to all the women who experience this.
Justin, I like the messaging instead of...
Another thing to be able to call note to is that he brought in external influences for this, what would be arguably expertise in this field to be able to convey things accurately and what most people would actually have resonance with. So he did do that, which then even for our own mindset of things, that is part of a film's planning, and it means that he was being intentional with that planning, even from an early stage, to be able to get other companies involved, which that has to be set months prior, sometimes even years prior. So it's something that he did walk into the creation of the film with the intent of doing so accurately. It's just something for us to log into our brains as we continue forward. So let's do that.
Instead of asking, why does she stay, ask, why did they do that? I think that's a much better lens to look at it. But it's my understanding that you hadn't intended on casting yourself, that Colleen Hoover said, you know, really, you should play this. Now, I find that interesting. What do you mean you didn't plan on casting yourself? You read the role.
Yeah, you know, I had an assistant at the time.
And you still could have said, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I had an assistant at the time who read the book, and she's like, you got to play Ryle. Yeah. And after I read it, I think there was this part of me that wanted to. I think we all have, you know, these big dreams, or like, oh, what a role that would be, or, you know, that would be incredible. But that little voice in our head is like, no, you can't do it. You're not good enough. And that was very loud for me. And honestly, I was nervous. This is a very complex, difficult role to play. And Colleen had sent me a very short email just before we finished the option of her book, and it was very simple. It said, have you ever thought about acting in the movie? Maybe Ryle. I could see it. And I think it was her belief in me that gave me the ability to dream and have the confidence to possibly pursue it. And 2 years later, after development, is when I decided to take it on.
And the premiere...
I'm gonna go ahead and pause there. So that is just a fascinating verbal thing to make note of, is that his initial plan was not to act in that specific role. His initial plan was to perhaps and likely cast somebody else until urged by other people around to be able to do so. Now, his response to that, I do find at least a little bit intriguing, is that he does try to say, oh, well, I didn't want to because it was a big role and I felt like I might not be able to, and maybe that might be the case. I didn't see anything non-verbally around that to be able to indicate, oh, he's being insincere here, or at very least insecure with what he's saying. But just the concept of it alone does strike me as a little fascinating. It's not uncommon for a person who's directing a movie and wants to star in the movie to be one of the main stars of the movie. And so for him to have that reluctance, I don't know. To me, it's just a little suspicious, but I have literally no good reason for that, just outside of the way that I'm thinking about it. But then throughout the rest of that, I didn't see any other areas of verbal difficulty processing. I didn't see any areas of self-soothers come in. I didn't see any blocking gestures come in. I didn't see anything come in that would indicate to me that he has something that he's trying to hide or manipulate around here, until at the very, very end, I saw a little bit of a shrug come in there, but it was closely related to the I don't know factor that he was saying in his verbal processing as well. So throughout that, all of that being said, even though it was a fairly complex question and answer, I did not see anything non-verbally that would push me away from believing what he said there. Let's continue.
The premiere was last night.
The premiere was last night.
How was it?
Oh, it was so beautiful. It's like to work on something for so long and then to celebrate it with the people you love. Yeah, I was kind of speechless all night.
Can I?
That one's fascinating to me. So he's answered fairly authentically throughout all of these. And then at the beginning of this answer, how did the viewing, everything go? He starts off a little bit more dramatically. It was so beautiful. And then throughout the rest of that, the so beautiful, unbelievably beautiful is the way that I'm seeing him say that, non-verbally with the no shake in there, and then hearing that. So that does seem synchronized, but then he keeps that as he's talking about the various other aspects of it and with the people you love, and it was just really good, and he's looking down and to the side. To me, that small cluster, the change in the answer, and then that small cluster of the looking down to the side and the micro no shakes in there, to me, it raises a red flag that perhaps something around that viewing party wasn't so great. Maybe it wasn't as beautiful, or there was just some sort of hiccup around it. And if my understanding is correct, he was not allowed to go to the same viewing party as Blake was, and that was at request of Blake. So that could be the reason that we're seeing that, oh, it was so beautiful, and these other little ticks that he shows during that time that kind of push me at least towards suspicion in that area. But again, that doesn't actually have anything to do with his character. That has more to do with what happened in the viewing party time. So we're still left needing to watch more. So let's do that.
Can I ask you
About Jane the Virgin?
wasn't it about Jane the Virgin?
Okay.
I love you, Gail. I love you.
We do love Jane the
Go ahead,
Virgin.
yes.
It was a great series. But
Yes.
one of the things that I'm curious about is when I first, because I hadn't read the book, and so when I started watching the movie, I was like, oh, it's a love story, and I love great romantic films until it takes that turn, and I thought, wow. I went into this thinking something completely different. What do you want men to take? I know women will love this because it's such a beautiful story, and the book was a beautiful book, according to the people who've read it. But what do you want men to take away from this film?
I want men, first of all, I want men to stop asking the question, why do women stay?
Yeah.
Right? I want men to take accountability. I want men to hold other men accountable. And in this particular film, I want men to go to the theater and in some way see a version of themselves. You have two very different characters. Both of them, in Atlas and Ryle, have had past trauma. One handles it very different than the other. And my other hope is that the men who have not done the work, to heal, if they see bits of themselves in Ryle, have a chance to step back and say, you know what, I don't want to blow up my life. I don't want to hurt the person I love the most. I need to get help. I need to feel all these things that I've buried so deep down so that it doesn't explode on somebody that I love. And hopefully that can create some compassion and empathy and make the world a safer place.
Justin.
All right, so during the entirety of that, a lot of palms up gestures and then open nonverbal communication with that. He maintains keeping his legs crossed throughout the entirety of this, but his arms and hands is where we can end up focusing a lot on. So we're seeing a lot of these palms up. This is submissive gestures, the open body language. Is open body language. Everybody's heard of that one. So he's going through and he's saying that, but then verbally, with that, his entire mantra for at least men going and seeing the movie or hearing about the movie is that they need to be able to take a better look at themselves and be better in and of themselves, and to not ask the stupid questions that so many that just are ignorant will ask. And that is great. That's a fantastic thing. Unfortunately, the entire media shitstorm around this movie has devalued the message of that dramatically. And that's really unfortunate because I don't know that that was ever Baldoni's intention. It didn't seem as though he wanted to start this media storm. Perhaps he did. There have been a lot of allegations thrown around, some with some proof, some without some proof, and it's obviously escalating to get to the court systems, and so this will only continue to unfold. But even with his reason for writing the movie for the men's side of things, he wants it to be for a level of accountability and introspection, which I support. I think that's a great idea. So with that side of things, I didn't see any closed nonverbal communication, any desynchronization points. Verbally, I agree with what he's saying here, so let's continue.
Safer place.
Justin Baldoni, thank you for being here. We love this
guys
film.
so
We
much.
love Jane the Virgin, too.
Oh.
And we love
Yes,
you. Thanks
we
so
do.
much for coming around.
Thank
And
you
people
so
have to
much.
see it on the big screen.
They really do.
Please go see it.
This here at the very end where he's touching in on his chest, this is a very intentional manipulator. He's not manipulating with it. It's just an intentional manipulator here. And so that is indicating heartfelt. I suppose the way you could look at it is that it is a little bit manipulative, not necessarily in a negative light. It's done to be able to show that something means something. Seeing that there he is trying to portray this level of vulnerability and softness, and that seems to be something that has been consistent throughout the rest of his professional career, from at least, like I said, from what I could find. So with that in mind, having looked at this and having seen and read through his case file and the evidences that are being involved here, it seems as though, non-verbally speaking, we're being pushed towards him being authentic during this, and the fact that he's willing to back it up immediately with physical evidence only goes further to push that on. There are already so many complexities around this that could make it to where it's not as simple as that. Perhaps he's using the evidence as a smokescreen. Maybe he's cherry picking. Maybe he's trying to muddy the waters. This is actually something that has been brought up by Blake's team, is that him offering to release all of the evidence is making it to where it's going to be more difficult for a jury pool to be involved and have an unbiased opinion on the entirety of the situation, to which the response from his side of things was that he didn't want this to go this way anyway. It was Blake that took this all public and decided to blow everything up all over the internet, and now this is his response to it and being able to do as best as he can. So for me, non-verbally speaking, it seems as though he's being authentic, and even from his track record, I still didn't see anything that broke away from that authenticity for him specifically. If you have a different opinion than this, let me know why in the comments of this video. There's distinctly the possibility that I've missed something in the research, that there's a file that I don't know about. I know that some people have been requesting I take a look at the, I think it's the rooftop scene, the behind the scenes of the rooftop scene, which I could do that. One of the difficulties that I have with that specific concept is that that is going to be centered around where they're really trying to be in character, in the studio, cameras pointed on them, teams around them, so it's less likely to be centered around authenticity. It's going to be more centered around those characters, which will make a nonverbal read a little bit more muddy, but I could, especially if it's something that enough of you have interest in. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments of this video. If you did like this video, go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to see more. I have a memberships and a Patreon. There's some extra content over there, but it kind of just really serves as a way for you to be able to offer a little extra financial tip for making the videos here on Observe, hopefully weekly. So if you decide to go and be a member or a patron, thank you in advance. You do not have to, but if you do, I really do appreciate it. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.